YouTube, oh my goodness, the 2025 NBA trade deadline was absolutely insane. And in this video, what we're going to be doing is, going through every single trade that happened during the deadline and kind of break them down and analyze them to the best of my abilities. This is a good way to kind of catch you guys up in case you missed some things on the deadline and give all my thoughts on it and kind of break down and analyze all of the trades during the deadline. Every single trade, folks. And this was the craziest trade deadline I've ever seen, and I think everyone's ever seen. So I'm really excited to get into this video. And of course, if you enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe. Of course, we did cover 3 of the biggest trades, and so we'll kind of give some brief thoughts on those because we already did cover them in separate videos. So you guys can go check those out. We did one for Jimmy Butler, Luka, and the De'Aaron Fox trade, and so all 3 of those are covered in separate videos, but I will try my best to do a little bit of a brief recapping. Now, I am going to start on the 21st of January because that's when I feel like the deadline kind of started. Without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start with the Suns and Jazz, picks trade, and this is kind of an interesting trade. I don't really, understand totally what the Suns were going for because they do get some, more short-term trade pieces, I guess. I don't think they're going to use these. They could end up using the 2025 one, but I think this trade was to, acquire more picks for a Kevin Durant or a Bradley Beal trade, you know what I mean? Either in the offseason or for the deadline, which really they didn't end up doing too much. But they get 2025, 2027, and 2029, the least favorable pick in the first round from the Cavs, Timberwolves, or Jazz. And so they actually end up sending a 2031 unprotected first round pick to the Jazz, which is a really good deal for the Jazz because basically, these 3 picks right here are most likely going to be for the Suns, late first round picks. They're just going to end up converting to Cleveland or Minnesota most of the time. So you're getting 3 late first round picks for a 2031 unprotected, which is much, much more valuable if you're the Jazz because who knows where the Suns are going to be in 2031, could be in the middle of a rebuild, and that could end up being a really, really good pick. And so I think the Jazz have a good trade here. I'm not exactly sure what the Suns are going for other than, more trade assets to stack up. Now this Clippers and Jazz were obviously very active. A lot of rebuilding teams with a lot of assets are going to be getting in on these bigger trades and some of these trades where teams are trying to dump contracts and stuff like that, and they're going to get whatever they can out of these teams, and the Jazz do a great job of that here. Clippers received Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills for Mo Bamba, PJ Tucker, a 2030 second round pick, and cash considerations. Again, the Clippers are being, in my opinion, a little bit taken advantage of here. These are 2 players on contracts that maybe you don't see in your long-term plans that aren't so favorable, and so the Jazz will just eat the contract and get a second round pick out of it and cash considerations. Jazz were never going to keep Drew Eubanks or Patty Mills long-term. These guys were, in my opinion, always going to be assets to move, and so Clippers get kind of a third or backup center out of this deal, and Patty Mills not really going to see the floor much in my opinion, and so I like the deal for the Jazz, to be honest. Of course, we'll be seeing PJ Tucker again here. This is the Luka deal. We've covered it already on the channel in a separate video, so you guys can check that out. But the Lakers get Luka, Kleber, and Markieff Morris. Mavs get Anthony Davis, Max Christie, 2029 first, and the Jazz get in on the deal, getting Jalen Hood-Schifino, 2025 second, and 2025 Clippers second. Again, this is the craziest trade in NBA history. I've already talked about it a bunch. Obviously, both teams in this deal, Mavs and Lakers, will be watching them with a very close eye, and it will shape, the Western Conference, in my opinion, for a very long time. And so this is a big, big deal. And the Jazz getting Hood-Schifino out of it. We didn't really talk about that part in 2 second round picks. Again, kind of just getting in on this deal and, taking advantage of teams that need them in a trade. We talked about the Fox trade. This is a lot of picks for the Kings to receive. They get Zach LaVine out of it as well. Bulls, I think everyone kind of got a good deal out of this. Kings get good value for Fox. Spurs get their number 2 and a backup point guard, but, mainly the second start of Wemby for the foreseeable future. And then Bulls, with getting off of that LaVine contract, getting some good expiring contracts pretty soon, and that, 2025 pick back via the Spurs, so they don't have to worry about where they place in the standings, whether or not they get their own pick or not, because it was protected. Again, you can check out this video if you guys want to, but I'm not going to be talking about it too much. Now, the Hornets swap picks with the Thunder. Hornets receive the 2029 second round pick via Suns, and the Thunder receive 2030 conditional second round pick via Nuggets. Not too sure about why this trade even happened. It could be a situation where the Thunder literally have too many picks and they have to move them because they just don't have enough, spots to be able to take these players with these picks. But I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know down in the comment section. This one doesn't make a whole ton of sense to me, and so maybe I'm missing something with that trade. Kind of interesting. This is a big trade, for my 76ers. Of course, I'm a 76ers fan. The Mavs land Caleb Martin from Sixers, and actually, this trade has been amended. So ESPN, actually no, this is NBA.com. Please get your facts straight. Mavs, this is kind of a weird trade. Mavs received Caleb Martin and Sixers received Quentin Grimes and a 2025 second round pick. Now this trade was amended to throw in a second round pick for the Mavs because apparently the Sixers lied about Caleb Martin's injury info, and so the Mavs wanted to be compensated for that because, again, I don't think the Mavs quite knew how serious the hip injury was for Caleb, and so Sixers just always doing something that costs them something. What's new? But Caleb Martin is a really, really good role player, and I think on a win now type of team for the Mavs, he's always going to step up in big moments in the playoffs. That's what they're kind of looking for here. He's kind of a streaky shooter, but he is such a good defender and such a good energy and hustle guy, and just a really, really great versatile role player that I think just makes a ton of big plays in big games. This is a great deal for the Mavs. This is a player that is under contract 3 more years after this one on a fair contract. Nothing crazy, and so I like the move for the Mavs. I really do. And people say they got fleeced because Quentin Grimes is a much younger player than Caleb Martin on a much cheaper contract, but he has to be extended next year, and I don't think people realize maybe the Mavs weren't intending to extend Quentin Grimes, and so if you're not going to, get some value out of him, and they end up doing it. I like Quentin Grimes as a player. He's a really good 3-and-D player, good shooter, really good defender, and just a versatile 3-and-D piece on the wing, similar to Caleb Martin in that regard. But I think Caleb Martin's a little bit more versatile in certain aspects. Like, he can handle the ball and he can put the ball on the floor and stuff like that, and so also his leadership, and also he's just a dog, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, this pick, now adding the second round pick to the Mavs, like, this is a pretty fair swap for both sides. I don't think anyone really won or lost necessarily. We'll have to see, but I like Quentin Grimes a lot for my team and I'm happy about it. But I also like Caleb Martin a lot, and I think Mavs fans will as well once he gets healthy from that injury. So it'll be interesting to see if the Sixers extend Grimes this offseason. And the Thunder trade cash considerations to the New Orleans Pelicans for Daniel Tice and a 2031 second round pick. So they're getting another second round pick out of this, and Daniel Tice, who, if he doesn't even see the floor, this is a third string center, I think pretty good one, and a veteran guy who's had a lot of winning experience, had a lot of playoff experience with, you think about the Celtics back in the day. I think overall just a smart player who's going to fit in well with that culture and stuff like that, and could provide some veteran presence, but also getting a 2031 second round pick out of it isn't bad either. And the Pelicans, let's say Isaiah Hartenstein goes down, or Jalen Williams goes down, or Chet Holmgren, who's coming back, goes down again, knock on wood, none of that happens, but Tice is a spot, player in a rotation, in my opinion. He will most likely be on the bench for the Thunder, but he's a good reserve to have, and so, maybe we see them move off of him or cut him or whatever, but we'll have to see. Kings acquire Valanciunas from Wizards. This is actually a really underrated trade, in my opinion. The Wizards received 2 future second round picks. City Sissoko, I believe is how you pronounce it, but Jonas, look, this guy is a really good rebounder. One of the best rebounders in the league, in my opinion. He's a really big, presence on the interior, and he really is going to fit what the Kings like to do. He's a great offensive rebounder, great interior guy. I think if you, potentially pair him with Sabonis, so Sabonis could play the 4, Jonas on the inside, or you could bring Jonas off the bench and potentially upgrade on that Alex Len role of kind of the backup 5. And, I just think this is a player that a lot of teams were looking to acquire, at that center position. He makes a lot of sense for the Kings as he's really good on the offensive end of the floor, and just a load down there in the paint on both ends. Really strong guy who's just going to rebound at an incredible pace. Finishing is really good, and so I like the move for the Kings. I really do. I think it's a great move. One of the more underrated ones of this deadline. And Celtics trade Jaden Springer, former Sixer, to the Rockets. Celtics receive a 2031 second round pick, and Rockets receive Jaden Springer and 2 second round picks. And so maybe the Celtics didn't see Jaden Springer in their long-term plans. Of course, from what I understand, a further along second round pick, like in 2031, could be more valuable than a 2027 or even 2030. And so, kind of an interesting move there. Maybe they don't see, again, Springer in their long-term plans, or someone they want to put in the rotation, and so they get some value out of it. They do trade 2 second round picks away though, and I'm kind of scratching the head there, but I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting move. We'll have to see. Maybe the Celtics look to trade that pick for the future in the offseason. Now, another Sixers deal here. This is kind of a deal that I was more expecting than not, I guess, but I didn't expect it in this way. The Wizards land veteran Reggie Jackson, who I believe they waived right after. This is a deal where they're trying to move off of, get something for this player that they don't see in their long-term plans, get a 2026 first round pick out of it. And so honestly, a really good deal for the Wizards because they get this first round pick. They had no intention of keeping Jared Butler or playing Reggie Jackson, but they just get a first round pick. They have to give up 4 second round picks, but they do get that 2026 first. And I believe it is the least valuable of the Thunder, Clippers, and Rockets. I could be wrong about that, but that's one of those picks. It's a conditional one. But the Sixers get Jared Butler, who I actually like a a lot as a player. I think he's a really high effort and high motor guy who has some skills offensively. You know, we've seen him torch the Sixers this season. I believe he scored 26 points in a game at Wells Fargo. And I'm excited for Jared Butler. I think he might sneak in the rotation, you know, kind of as maybe a third string 2 or a backup guard and stuff like that. And so I like his intensity as a player, and I like his skill set. I think he's just going to make a really good Sixer, the kind of guy that, you know, Sixers fans love, is a hard worker, and we get 4 second-round picks out of it. I'm not thrilled about trading away the first, but, you know, Reggie Jackson, he actually does provide maybe some value on the buyout market. Maybe we see the Sixers sign him back. That'd be pretty fun. But Reggie Jackson, good shooter, good handler, good playmaker at this point in his career. He's not going to be, you know, the top of the rotation guy that he once was. If you're putting Reggie Jackson on the floor, in my opinion, no offense to him, but you're probably weak at depth at that position. Good third string guard, in my opinion, but not someone you want on the floor at all times. But he is a good shooter and did make a lot of, you know, contributions to my Sixers this year in a short rotation. But I like Jared Butler a lot. I think he plays for the Sixers this season. And Hawks trade Cody Zeller to the Rockets. Cody Zeller goes to the Rockets along with a 2028 second round pick, and the Hawks receive the draft rights to Alpha Kaba, who I believe is an overseas player that hasn't come to the NBA yet, which is kind of an interesting deal. And Cody Zeller, you know, might be a player that the Rockets are going to either waive or just not put in a rotation. He could play backup or third string. 2028 second round pick, I feel, is the most significant piece of this trade, obviously, and so something to consider there. Pacers deal Wiseman to Raptors, who actually, you know, was off to kind of a revenge point in his career where he had a really solid year for the Pistons last year as a backup 5, signs a good deal with the Pacers, and tears his Achilles in the first game, which really didn't, I hated to see that because I really believed in Wiseman as a backup 5 in this league. And I thought the contract was really good for the Pacers, who needed a player like that on the interior, an athletic interior force on both ends of the floor, good rim protection, good rebounder, and athletic lob finisher. And, you know, unfortunately, the Achilles was such a devastating injury for him, and I hope he's recovering well. But Pacers deal him to the Raptors, who I'm not sure, he is the kind of player they like at the 5. I feel like he's super athletic and long and just a freak athlete, and the Raptors just love their long athletes, and so it does make sense if they were going to keep him, but he is on a contract that maybe they don't find favorable. Maybe they look to you know, waive him or whatever. But the Raptors get cash considerations in Wiseman, and the Pacers receive a 2026 second round pick. So a good deal for both sides, I feel. Pacers clearly don't see him in their long-term plans as a backup 5 or even a starting 5, and so they get a pick out of it, a 2026 second, and they move off of that contract. Now, this one kind of made me sad as a Sixers fan. This is one of the worst trades I've ever seen from my team. It's, you know, we'll talk about it in a second, but basically the Pistons land KJ Martin, excellent finisher, freak athlete, great dunker, good rebounder, like just a versatile forward. And I think has a lot of potential in this league still to grow as a player, and there's not a whole lot he can't do. And he shot the ball really well this season for the Sixers, even though it is limited volume and stuff like that, but he worked on his 3-point shot and it did pretty well. And obviously just a great transition player. As far as lobs, he can take it to the rim himself off the dribble, and, you know, he's a small ball forward, like a 4, you know what I mean? But he's, in my opinion, good upside defensively. He can even play make a little bit. He's just a smart player with a good head on his shoulders with a lot of, you know, skills. And I really didn't want to see him traded because the original re-signing for him, remember we got him in the Harden deal and we re-signed him this offseason, and the original thought was a balloon contract. He signed a 2-year, $8 million a year contract for 16 total. The second year was not guaranteed. The reason I think we did that, basically give him a higher contract than maybe his value would have indicated at that time. And so at the deadline, then you could go out and, you know, get another $8 million or $11 million player back without trading someone you deem as, I guess, worth that contract. And so, you know, kind of unfortunate how it all worked out because he actually played up to his contract, in my opinion, and I thought we should have kept him. And we end up giving KJ Martin and 2 second-round picks for cash considerations. And I believe the reason we did that is so that the owner, Josh Harris, can get under the luxury tax and save a few dollars. And so that's kind of really disappointing for me. I know the season isn't necessarily leading it to a great place, but at the end of the day, this guy is a young player and he's a good player on a non-guaranteed contract next season. And we not only give him up for basically nothing, we also add in 2 second-round picks. And so that just really made me very upset, I guess. And so a lot of Sixers fans are really upset about this trade. But the Suns deal Nurkic to Hornets. They have been looking to move off of the use of Nurkic contract. He hasn't been in the rotation as much, and this is a good deal for them, in my opinion. They do give up a 2026 first-round pick. That's pretty on brand for the Suns, I would say. But they move off the contract, and they get, you know, 2 valuable role players. One in particular, Cody Martin, who I think is an awesome player, just like his twin brother. You know, he is a versatile kind of jack of on-ball trade Swiss Army knife, good versatile defender with a lot of playmaking upside and some on-ball creation as well as shooting at the right moments. You know, he's not the best shooter, but he is certainly capable, and he has a lot of, you know, tools. He's actually very similar to his brother in a lot of ways, but really good, just versatile kind of role player that I think the Suns will really look to get a lot of value out of, because you have guys like Royce O'Neal, you have guys like Ryan Dunn, and he just fits in that mix. He's going to be a good defender and a smart, high IQ player with a good fundamental skill set. And I think Vasily Micic, obviously this has not been his year. I was really looking forward to him on the Hornets being sort of a rotation guard who can be a really good playmaker and floor spacer, but that hasn't been the case. Hasn't shot well, hasn't played well this season. But, you know, this is a good, you know, talent from the point guard position. Maybe you end up getting more out of him. I'm not so sure that, you know, this team is going to look to play him, but you get a 2026 second and you give up a 2026 first, and Nurkic, I'm not sure Nurkic is going to be in the long-term plans of the Hornets, but he might, because they did trade both of their centers, and so we'll have to see. But good trade for the Suns and good trade for the Hornets in that regard. Now, the Pistons acquired Dennis Schroder, which was actually a part of the Jimmy Butler trade. And like I said, KJ Martin was a trade piece for us, and now he's being traded to the Utah Jazz, unfortunately, for him, because I want to see him on a good team succeed. But, you know, this is a trade that maybe, I guess, the Pistons didn't see KJ Martin as a rotation player, and so they end up getting Dennis Schroder, Lindy Waters, and a future second-round pick from the Warriors. And then the Jazz get KJ Martin and a future second-round pick. I think the Pistons were looking for a playable backup point guard, a rotation point guard, and Dennis Schroder fits the bill. He's a good two-way point guard, in my opinion. He's a little hot and cold at times, but I think he provides value on both ends, whether it's playmaking and shooting on offense, and just kind of being a guy that can run an offense, or, you know, whether it's, you know, long, versatile defense on the other end. Lindy Waters was a good shooter for the Warriors this season. I think provided some value, kind of earned his way into the rotation, and a future second-round pick. So honestly, a trade, I think, you know, KJ Martin, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up somewhere else next season, because at the end of the day, I don't think the Jazz have him in their long-term plans, but maybe they do. He's an athletic player with high upside, and they get a future second-round pick for this trade, but it would be awesome if they bought him out and we got to re-sign him. That's what I'm really hoping for. The Raptors land Tucker from Heat. So PJ Tucker was, you know, obviously in this trade of the Jimmy Butler trade, and he went back to the Heat, and I was thinking, oh, a reunion there. I don't think he'll play much, but he had a lot of success with the Heat in the past before he came to my Sixers, and then eventually the Clippers in the Harden deal. But Raptors get him. Again, I don't think he's, you know, going to be a Raptor for very long, if at all, right? Raptors received PJ Tucker 2026 second via Heat and cash considerations via Heat, and Heat received Davion Mitchell, maybe a player they like. He fits the culture really well. He's a good defender, undersized guy, but, you know, at times can just provide that pesty on-ball quality on defense, and I think they like that. And obviously he's a young player came in the league with some expectations on the Kings, but, you know, I kind of see this working for the Heat. I think he's the type of guy they'll fix as far as offense goes. Sort of been a little bit of a liability at points in his career, and so I like the trade for both teams. Raptors get a second-round pick. He'd get a, you know, guy maybe they can work on and develop with that awesome development program. This was a trade I was not expecting. There was a lot of talk about Bogdan Bogdanovic going to the Lakers, or potentially, you know, some other teams were interested, but the Hawks, you know, there's been rumors about Bogey for a long time, many years now. He's always a guy at the deadline people look at, and the Hawks were kind of in a sale, you know, mode at this point, which was kind of surprising to me. But Bogey, I thought was going to be moved. I didn't think it would be to the Clippers, and the Hawks get a really good deal out of this, folks. Clippers get Bogey, you know, a really great offensive weapon. You know, he's just a great floor spacer, one of the best shooters throughout the last 5 or 6 years in the league, and he has a bag as well. He can create for himself, he can create for others. He's got playmaking qualities to him. The Hawks get Terrence Mann, who's a great 3-and-D player with some playmaking upside, and Bones Highland, who I think, you know, local guy to me, but I'm pretty sure Bones Highland, you know, was kind of a throw-in in this trade, and he wasn't getting any playing time on the Clippers, and I'm not sure he's going to get much playing time on the Hawks, because now with Terrence Mann in the guard mix, or maybe the wing mix, you know, Terrence Mann can realistically play 1 through 4 a lot of times on both ends, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But the Hawks get 3 second-round picks, which is a big deal, and they get a player that I think could fit there long-term. Imagine Terrence Mann and Dyson Daniels, you know, guarding backcourt players for the foreseeable future, and Trae Young gets to take the corner guy, right? Like, this is a really good move for their defense, and just overall, I think they get better through this trade, and they get a lot of value in these 3 second-round picks. And Bogey, again, he was a really great Hawk for a long time, but I just don't think the timeline of the Hawks fits up with Bogey and where he's at in his career. So really good deal for the Hawks. And I think the Clippers, now with potentially Bogdan as the 6th man, could make a lot of sense. You have Norman Powell, and so you can kind of rotate those 2 guys in and out. 2 awesome offensive weapons. I really like that trade for mainly the Hawks, but I get what the Clippers are trying to do. Bogey's a really good player. So this is a trade we haven't talked about, and this was a really big one. This is another blockbuster, and this is the kind of trade that in years past could have been the biggest trade of, a trade deadline any given year. It ended up being like the 4th biggest trade of this deadline, or 5th even, which is absolutely crazy because this is a 3-team blockbuster where the Bucks receive Kyle Kuzma from the Wizards, as well as Patrick Baldwin, Jericho Sims via the Knicks, and a 2025 second-round pick. The Wizards receive Khris Middleton from the Bucks, and so his time is at an end for the Bucks. We know about his injury issues. It's so unfortunate because he was such an awesome player, and he still has a lot left in the tank, in my opinion, as a kind of third role scorer and playmaker and just offensive guy. But sad to see him go from the Bucks because I really liked Khris Middleton's time there. He was such an awesome player for them, and it's sad to see him go. He was a long-time Buck, really made his way there, won that finals as probably the 2nd best player on that team. And the Wizards get AJ Johnson out of this, and I like AJ Johnson as a potential really good offensive player in the future, and I think there's a lot there with AJ Johnson. This was the Bucks' 1st-round pick this year. He is a basically offensive scoring, shot creating wing who has a lot of bag, and I think there is something to develop there in AJ Johnson, and I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes like an excellent, like amazing player in the future. And so the Bucks are just saying, like, we want Kuzma as our 3rd option. We're getting rid of Middleton, and this is kind of a situation where they were probably forced, if they wanted to get this deal done, to throw in one of their best potential players in development. So I think the Wizards get excellent value out of this 2028 1st-round pick swap, which is another awesome thing for the Wizards. And the Knicks received Delon Wright via the Bucks, pesky defensive guard, really good defender, and can hit a 3, and it draft rights to Hugo Besson and cash consideration. So the Knicks getting Delon Wright out of this, basically trading Jericho Sims, who maybe they're not so thrilled with as a rotation 5, but this is a huge trade for basically the Wizards and the Bucks. Knicks getting in on the action, but Kyle Kuzma to the Bucks. This is such a big deal. We've seen Kyle Kuzma, have a big time production leap in since his time with the Lakers to the Wizards in that Russell Westbrook trade, of course, and really earn a great contract. His contract isn't necessarily so favorable to the Bucks, in my opinion, but as a 3rd option, I still think there's value to Kyle Kuzma. He gets clowned a lot on Twitter. You see a lot of airball compilations. Listen, this guy's on a winning team for once in the last 5 years, and now he has something to prove and something to, an important role to play. I think he's gonna, he is a very skilled offensive player. He's not a great defender, but this guy is a number 3 option. I mean, we saw him on the Lakers basically have a similar role where he was maybe you could say the 3rd offensive option on that team, win a title. This guy is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. Again, when you're on the Wizards for so long, I just think people just look at you differently and you play differently, right? Like, you don't have anything to play for in Washington, no offense, but now that he has something to play for and, go earn his contract with, great players, he's gonna have to live up to an excellent standard, and he's done it before, and he's only gotten better since that time. And so I'm actually a big fan of this trade for the Bucks. People are clowning on it right now, but I think you're gonna see a different level of offense with the Bucks now with, a much more, I guess, consistent and a little bit more reliable 3rd option. No offense to Khris Middleton, but he's just been out of the lineup too much. That's the thing, and on minutes restrictions and stuff like that, it's not his fault. He's an awesome player and was an awesome player and still has a lot left in the tank, but Kuzma to the Bucks is a big deal, and Wizards get a great value trade for a guy that doesn't fit their timeline and a 1st-round pick swap, as well as AJ Johnson, who I think could end up being one of the best players in this trade, if not the best, 5 years from now. Los Angeles Lakers. This is another blockbuster to me, at least, right? The Lakers received Mark Williams from the Charlotte Hornets, one of the best young and up-and-coming centers in the league. He's still so young, and they actually are going to be setting out Cam Reddish and Dalton Connect, who I thought was going to be a future staple of this franchise. Turns out it wasn't. The Lakers needed a center, and they needed one bad, and they get maybe the best one on the market. It's certainly the one with the highest upside on both ends of the floor. 2031 unprotected 1st and at 2030 pick swap. Listen, you're sending out Dalton Connect, who has a ton of potential as a shooter and scorer in this league, and Cam Reddish, who I like as a rotation wing, and you're trading these picks. 2031 unprotected could be insanely valuable. Who knows where the Lakers will be by then, but Mark Williams is such a great center in this league. He's, arguably already one of the top 10 or 15 centers in the league, probably 15. 2019. He is such a dominant rebounder and such a great defensive anchor down there. He's mobile, he's rangy, he's an excellent finisher, he's a freak athlete, and this guy is a force on both ends of the floor. And when he's out there, he's had a lot of injuries. That's the only thing that worries me about this trade for the Lakers, is you send out a lot of future capital and get back, an awesome talent at a position that you basically needed, or you weren't going to make a finals run anytime soon unless you upgrade that center position. So I think the move's awesome for the Lakers. It definitely makes sense to me, and I think you get a player that has such high upside. Again, I talked about his skill set already, has dominant defensive potential, has awesome mobility, has great finishing upside. He shoots free throws well, but he's so young, and I don't think he's played 50% of where he could in the future. Like, this guy could be a two-way star at center, could be a future all-star, like could be a all second team, first team defense guy in the future. Like, he has that potential to me as a star center on both ends. And but the only thing I'm worried about with Mark Williams is just the injuries. He has not been able to stay on the floor as much as you'd like for a player of his age, and we know that players with this size that he has, he's a 7'2" guy, 280, 250 pounds. Like, we just know that it's harder for them to, if they already have injury issues, harder for them to stay healthy than most players. But if he can stay healthy, he fixes all of the Lakers center problems overnight, right? I get that you sent out Connect, and a lot of Lakers fans are upset about that. They thought he'd be there a long time, but I don't know that people, just because the Hornets are not necessarily the most watched team in the league, biggest market, you are getting such a great player in Mark Williams, and I don't think enough people know who he is to really judge this trade accurately. This is a great player, okay? And especially with the Lakers, he's been in a situation where he hasn't really gotten to display all of his talents on a bigger stage. He's gonna be able to do that with the Lakers, and you're gonna be so thrilled with his play. Again, this is your future, this is your long-term center. It has to be because of this trade, and he's gonna be able to live up to that. Mark Williams, awesome player with some of the highest upside at the center position as far as young players go in the league. This is a shocker, and I'm so upset that my Sixers didn't make a push for this guy, DeAndre Hunter, who I love as a 3-and-D role player, a souped-up 3-and-D role player, right? Cavs get DeAndre Hunter, okay? And Cavs, they're already the best team in the East. This makes them so much better, it's not even funny. They trade Khris, George Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. This is a lot of picks, like, for sure. But I don't think people realize how good and efficient DeAndre Hunter has been offensively this season. He is a nightmare as a 5th, 4th option on this team, right? He is such a knockdown, lethal marksmanship shooter. He doesn't need the ball in every possession. He's a guy you can go 5 straight possessions without him even touching the basketball, and he can still create a shot for himself off of the dribble, late in a shot clock. He can still knock down a catch and shoot better than almost anyone in the league. His excellent size to be able to get those shots up over many types of matchups, and he's just a pure bucket. And defensively, he's long, he's athletic, and he can switch on multiple positions. The Cavs needed better perimeter defense, okay? They have one of the best defenses in the league, but he's going to help them defensively. They don't really have a lot of players like him with the length and athleticism that he has, and they get more athletic, they get more skilled offensively, and they just add another marksman shooter on the catch. And so this is just going to make them, so much better just overnight, and this could be a guy that they re-sign in the future. As far as Niang and LeVert, listen, Khris LeVert, he is a guy that I think did a lot of great things this season in particular for the Cavs. He took on a new role, he wasn't shooting as much, and he was a lot more efficient in his selection of shots, which was a big deal, and he's a good playmaker and just a good guy to have on, as like a 6-man type of player. But DeAndre Hunter is just, no offense to Khris LeVert, but he's just such a massive upgrade at this position. George Niang had a bad contract, and he's mainly a shooter, and I think when he's not shooting well, he's unplayable. He has defensive limitations. I know from a Sixers fan's perspective, I love him, and I love his heart and his energy, and he actually was really popular in Philly because of that, but just not sure he's a guy you can really count on in a playoff situation. But I cannot understate, this is probably the most underrated move of the deadline. Nobody's talking about this move, and it makes the best team in the Eastern Conference that much better, like so much better on both ends of the floor. I love it for the Cavs. I wanted Hunter to be a Sixer so bad because he's from Philadelphia, so he's a Philly native. He fits the team so well. We need a guy like that, and he's a Philly guy. It just made so much sense to me, and looking at the package here, like, we definitely could have got him. looking at the package, it's just so unfortunate. So this is the Andrew Wiggins trade. Some stuff has updated since my video yesterday on Jimmy Butler came out. Now with the updated, players that went to certain teams, basically there's, moves kind of underhanded behind the scenes that went on that actually changed this deal quite a bit. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the fits and all that because we did in yesterday's video for like Butler and Wiggins, but the Warriors get Jimmy Butler, 2 second-round picks via Heat, cash considerations via Heat. Heat get Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and Davion Mitchell. We didn't know these 2 players yesterday. We're going to the Heat, and so really good move there. I think Kyle Anderson fits the Heat culture really well. We already talked about Davion Mitchell with the Heat. 2025 protected first from the Warriors. We talked about that. Heat got great value out of this trade, no question. Jazz are getting Josh Richardson. Wouldn't be surprised if him and KJ Martin were waived or dealt in the offseason. 2028 second round pick, 2031 second round pick, and cash considerations. They got a good deal out of this, just getting assets, so they didn't really give up anything. Pistons get Lindy Waters III via Warriors. Obviously, Dennis Schroder, we talked about that in the KJ Martin deal, and 2031 second round pick. Raptors get PJ Tucker, 2026 second round pick via Heat, and cash considerations. So everyone made out well with this trade. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but this one I am, because this is basically the 4th biggest trade of the deadline that, is just crazy. I didn't expect this to happen in a million years. I knew Brandon Ingram was a potential trade asset all offseason long and one of my Sixers to get him, and he ends up going to the Raptors, which is kind of crazy to me. Brandon Ingram is a Raptor, and I'm guessing they'll extend him. Like, I don't understand why they wouldn't, right? The whole talk about Brandon Ingram, how great of an offensive player he is, and honestly improved defensive player. Basically that the Pelicans, didn't want to re-sign him, give him a max extension. The Raptors are in a situation where now they can, and he fits this team really well. He's long, he's a freak player, great offensive talent, one of the top, pure offensive players in the league. Pelicans receive Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, first round pick, second round pick from Raptors, and I actually think that's a good return for Brandon Ingram. Bruce Brown's a really great player, Kelly Olynyk's a good role player, and you get a first round pick and a second round pick, and I don't believe either of them are protected, and so this is a good deal for the Pelicans because they weren't going to re-sign BI, so it's just a good deal. But the Raptors, this is kind of an interesting move because I'm not so sure Brandon Ingram necessarily fits the timeline of this team. He's still young, no question. He's 26 or 27, and he's in the prime of his career. But this 4-man combination of potentially Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley long term sounds awesome to me in this Eastern Conference. Assuming they give Brandon Ingram that contract extension, we'll have to see what ends up working out. But the Raptors are kind of in a weird spot right now with whether or not they're going to be in a rebuild, whether or not they want to try to develop these young guys. I think personally they're kind of doing both at the same time. I think they're developing the young guys while tanking, and they potentially could land a really good pick this year. But this is I've talked about this a lot in the offseason. This is a team in the future that I think has some of the best future in the Eastern Conference of any team. They're right up there with teams like the Pistons for me personally. RJ Barrett's played awesome in Toronto. Emmanuel Quickley has been hurt a lot, and I hate that because he's such a talented lead guard who I think is basically a star player, or has the potential to be a star player if he's healthy for a full season, playing with these guys, right? And Scotty Barnes, just a two-way monster, all-star, all-NBA caliber guy on a good team. And so now you land BI. And so this lineup is lethal for me next season. When everybody's back healthy, when everybody's looking to win games, you have a really good coach who I like in Darko Rajakovic. You have other pieces on this team. You move Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, but I just love Brandon Ingram as a player. And I think, next season is really where you're going to start to see the Raptors try to win and win big. And I think they have a really good chance next year to be able to do that with the Brandon Ingram deal. Now, this is the last trade that we're going to cover. It's the last trade of the deadline. This was kind of a buzzer beater here. The Wizards getting Marcus Smart, Colby Jones, Alex Len, a 2025 first round pick via the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies get 2 second round picks, Marvin Bagley III, Johnny Davis, and the Kings receive Jake LaRavia. The Wizards getting Marcus Smart, and all of a sudden Chris Middleton and AJ Johnson. And now you're saying, they're getting Alex Len and a 2025 first, which is awesome for the Wizards value-wise. Like, they get Marcus Smart and a 2025 first. We'll have to see if Marcus Smart ends up being in Washington very long, and Chris Middleton for that matter. I think they're going to tank to the end of the season, right? And then they're going to try to get Cooper Flagg. And if they don't, they're going to pick someone super high, and then they're going to try to start to win some games next year with that. I think they can. I mean, this is a young, talented roster, and they're kind of doing what the Spurs did last year. They're kind of like, through some kind of subversive ways, they're trying to limit their roster to, tank as many games as possible. Alex Sarr has turned out like a good player, and I think he's going to be a really great player. This defense could be pretty dynamic now with Marcus Smart and Alex Sarr. They have a lot of young pieces that I like. Jordan Poole's shot a lot better this season. Now you bring Khris Middleton, some veterans into the mix. Like, I just like this trade for the Wizards, if that's their plan long term. If it's not, I'm not sure what they're doing. And they get that 20-25 first via the Grizzlies. It's going to be a late first for sure, but still another pick. I like Bub Carrington as a prospect a lot, Keyshawn George as well. And so Wizards in a really flexible spot with, whatever direction they want to go in, but they're probably trying to get Cooper Flag at this point, being the worst record in the league. And that's pretty much it for the video, folks. This was a crazy trade deadline. I haven't seen anyone even close to it. This is by far the craziest deadline I've ever seen. So if you guys enjoyed this recap of all these trades, and I know I did, and so if you guys did, please leave a like on the video. We're going to be talking about stuff like this almost every day on the channel. Videos just like this almost every day. And so if you guys want to see the breakdowns of the bigger trades that we didn't talk about so much in this video, make sure you guys check them out. They're my latest 3 videos. I definitely want you guys to see what I said about it, see if you agree. Do you agree with all my analysis on this video? Please give any context that you can. Maybe something I missed. I'm sure I missed some things. I asked for a few questions, so if you guys have that info, please leave a comment. Craziest trade deadline by far that I've ever seen. 4 blockbusters, maybe even 5 really, and just so many great players on new teams for the foreseeable future, maybe long-term future with a lot of these players. And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys don't want to miss any more content like this. Like I said, almost every day on this channel we'll be uploading stuff just like this, whether it's NBA news, NBA coverage, creative fun videos, and it'll just keep coming almost every day. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Trying to get to 15K subs, and so let me know all your feedback and stuff like that down in the comments, and subscribe with notifications turned on, never miss another video. Subscribe to my other 2 channels, 2K. Dehave 2K is my second channel. We upload 2K content, new videos soon on there. And the third channel is for miscellaneous stuff, but I have a fun series planned that I will be releasing soon. So make sure you guys check that out and subscribe to my other 2 channels. Links are in the description, as well as my Twitter or X link is down in the description of that. That's my most active social media. And I just love you guys so much. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. This has been the craziest trade deadline. Every single trade broken down for the 2025 NBA season. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today. This is your boy Dehave, and as always, peace.